Welcome to Revenge and Karma episodes. My daughter Mara lifted her champagne glass at the rehearsal dinner and smiled at everyone watching. The room went quiet for her toast. Then she said it, looking right at me. "This is my father, who we love dearly, even when he's a little embarrassing." Light laughter rippled across the tables. Some people smiled. Others looked uncomfortable. I felt my hand tighten around my water glass. The word hung in the air like smoke. Embarrassing. Across the room, a man I'd never met turned slowly in his chair. He stared at me with narrowed eyes, like he was trying to place a face from another lifetime. His name was Samuel Pierce, the groom's father. After 5 long seconds, he leaned forward and asked quietly, "Sir, should I tell them?" The laughter died. I lifted my glass, took one slow sip, and said calmly, "Just not yet. If you're already shocked by what you just witnessed, you're not alone. Subscribe to this channel and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I want to know this story is reaching people who understand. Now, let me tell you how I got here. My name is Caleb Turner. I'm 64 years old. I built Turner Construction from a pickup truck and my father's old toolbox 40 years ago. Foundation work, framing, roofing, the kind of labor that leaves your hands rough and your back tired. I raised my daughter mostly alone after my wife Ruth died 6 years back. The rehearsal dinner was at Riverside Hall, white tablecloths and candles everywhere. My daughter wore a cream dress and her mother's pearl earrings. When she called me embarrassing, her smile never reached her eyes. Samuel Pierce sat 3 chairs away. His reaction wasn't random. He knew something. And my daughter had no idea what she'd just triggered. 4 months earlier was the first time I noticed it. We were at a barbecue at my daughter's house. Her friend asked what I did for work. Before I could answer, my daughter Mara jumped in sweetly. "Oh, Dad's retired now, finally slowing down." It landed soft but heavy, like a hand pushing on my shoulder. I'd brought my leather folder that day, stuffed with blueprints for a community center I was consulting on. My daughter saw the folder but never asked about it. She only saw an old man carrying papers he didn't need. That night, driving home alone, I realized something. She'd started writing a story about me. A story where I was fading, forgetting, done. A story I never agreed to. The word retired stuck in my head for days. I wasn't retired. I was working 3 active projects. But my daughter had decided otherwise. 2 weeks before my daughter's wedding, she came to my house with a dress bag and a manila envelope. She kissed my cheek and said she needed me to sign simple wedding paperwork for the venue deposit. I opened it at my kitchen table. The forms looked official, stamped and dated. But something felt wrong. This wasn't about flowers or catering. The language mentioned property access, easement rights, and boundary adjustments. At the bottom was a folded county map showing my land, the 40 acres my wife and I bought in 1985. A red line ran along the river edge. My daughter stood by the window scrolling her phone. "Just sign at the bottom, Dad. The planner needs it Friday." I didn't sign. I told her I'd review it first. Her smile went tight. "So don't overthink it. It's just standard stuff." That phrase, standard stuff. Nothing about this felt standard. Monday morning, I drove to the county records office. The building smelled like old paper and floor wax. I asked the clerk, Nadine, for copies of all filings under my property. She'd known me for years from permit work. When she pulled up my parcel number, her face changed. "Mr. Turner, there have been multiple requests for your deed copies and easement records, 5 in the past 3 months. She printed the log. Every request came from the same law firm, Pierce and Associates, the same last name as my daughter's future in-laws. Nadine slid the papers across the counter slowly. "You might want to see what's being filed, not just requested. I folded the log into my jacket. My chest felt tight. This wasn't about a wedding. Something bigger was moving in the shadows, and it had my daughter's fingerprints all over it. I called my son, Evan. We met at Mel's Diner off Highway 9. The coffee tasted burnt. My son arrived nervous, looking at his hands before he even sat down. I asked him straight, "Did your sister ask you to help with paperwork?" He couldn't meet my eyes. "She said you were getting confused. Asked me to keep things smooth." Then my son showed me a photo on his phone. My kitchen counter, taken from inside my house. On the counter sat a portable scanner. Someone had been in my home copying old documents, my old signatures. My son's voice shook. "She said it was just to organize your files. I didn't think it meant anything bad." I stared at the image. The betrayal wasn't just words anymore. It was physical. Someone had walked through my house, untouched my papers, stolen my name, and my son had helped her do it. At home, I opened my wife's cedar box from the closet. It still smelled like her lavender sachets. Under recipe cards, I found an envelope I'd forgotten about. Inside was a trust amendment my wife Ruth prepared 2 years before she died. She'd asked me to keep it safe, but never explained why. The language was clear. The land stayed in my name unless I chose otherwise. No automatic transfers. No joint ownership. At the bottom was my wife's handwriting. "Some people mistake softness for surrender. Protect what we built, Caleb. Don't let anyone tell you it's not yours to keep." The date was newer than I remembered. My wife had seen this coming before I did. She'd known my daughter might pressure me someday. She'd built this wall to protect me from our own daughter, and that truth settled in my chest like cold water. I ran into Samuel Pierce at the courthouse the next morning. He was leaving the land records office as I walked in. He stopped when he saw me. "Mr. Turner, I thought that was you at dinner." We stepped into a quiet hallway. Samuel told me he remembered me from a title dispute 15 years back. His sister had nearly lost her property to a scam using forged easements. I'd testified as an expert witness because I'd done the original survey work. "Your testimony saved her estate," Samuel said. Then he pulled a folded document from his briefcase. "This was filed last week. You should see it." It was a land option agreement, my property, my signature, except I'd never signed it. My daughter's wedding was sitting on top of a real estate deal I knew nothing about. Samuel's eyes were hard. "I thought you knew, but seeing your face at that dinner, I realized you didn't." I stopped answering my daughter's calls. For 3 days, my phone buzzed with texts. "Dad, are you okay? Did I upset you? We need those signatures by Friday." I didn't respond. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with my file cabinet open, building a timeline on legal paper. Who asked for what? When they asked? Under whose authority? The pattern became clear. Every county records request happened right after a wedding planning meeting. Every notary visit lined up with a cake tasting or dress fitting. My daughter had been using her wedding as camouflage for something else entirely. The celebration was the distraction. The real work was happening in filing offices and law firms while everyone focused on flowers and centerpieces. On Thursday, I called my bank and asked them to freeze every account with my name on it, starting now. At the bank, a woman named Claire in a navy blazer took me seriously because I brought documents, not just complaints. She pulled up my accounts and found a pending wire transfer I'd never authorized. $60,000 to a wedding escrow account, flagged for release after the ceremony. Claire turned her screen toward me. "Did you approve this?" I said no. That one word changed everything. She printed a yellow slip and circled my daughter's initials at the bottom. "This was set up 3 weeks ago using joint access. If you didn't authorize it, we need to file fraud protection immediately." I stared at my daughter's handwriting on the authorization form. She hadn't just asked for my land. She'd already started moving my money. So the wedding wasn't the beginning. It was the finish line for a plan that had been running for months. I hired June Alvarez, a title attorney Nadine recommended. Her office was small but organized. She spread the documents across her desk under a bright lamp. It took her 5 minutes to spot the problem. This signature doesn't match your current one. It's been lifted from an older document. She showed me a magnified comparison. My signature from a 2003 road permit, scanned and placed on new forms. Someone had copied my name from county archives and used it to authorize property changes I knew nothing about. June leaned back. Mr. Turner, whoever did this knows what they're doing. This isn't amateur hour. They're building a legal paper trail that looks legitimate from the outside. She paused. But it won't hold up in court if we move fast. I looked at the evidence spread across her desk. My daughter had done this, or allowed it to be done. Either way, she'd chosen this path. I sat across from my son at my breakfast table the next morning. Sunlight came through the window. I asked him one question. Did your sister tell you I was confused? My son's hands shook around his coffee mug. She said you were resistant, old-fashioned, that you'd be easier to manage if you stayed out of the details. He admitted my daughter had asked him to keep me away from the county office, to redirect my questions if I started digging. His voice cracked. I thought I was helping you avoid stress. I didn't know it was about stealing your land. My son wasn't evil. He was just weak. A witness who got used because he wanted to believe his sister was good. I told him the truth quietly. Son, you helped her lie to me. That's something you'll carry. He nodded, tears in his eyes. It didn't fix anything, but at least he finally saw it. If you're still watching this, please subscribe, because somehow it gets even worse from here. I wish I was exaggerating. Nadine showed me the full request history on my property. 8 certified copy requests, each one official-looking. One notary stamp belonged to a mobile service that worked wedding venues. That detail mattered. My daughter had used her wedding planners network to hide the paper trail. Mobile notaries who stamp anything for the right fee. No questions asked. The wedding industry became the cover for property fraud. Every bridal appointment, at every venue visit created an excuse for another document to get signed, copied, filed. Nadine made copies of everything and slid them across the counter in a thick folder. Mr. Turner, someone went to serious trouble to make this look clean. You're going to need more than records to stop it. I thanked her and headed straight to June's office. The evidence was growing, but we needed one more piece. I went to Riverside Hall 3 days before the ceremony. My daughter had asked me to check a seating issue, so I had an excuse. The ballroom was beautiful. Tall windows, white linens, candlelight. I found the seating chart on a gold easel near the entrance. My name was at table 12. Back corner. Far from the main family table, far from the Pierces, far from anyone important. My name was printed smaller than the others, like an afterthought, and the wedding planner, Bryn, saw me staring. Mara wanted you somewhere quiet, said you'd be more comfortable away from the noise. The insult wasn't spontaneous. It was designed. My daughter had been staging me out of the room for weeks. By the time she called me embarrassing at the rehearsal, everyone had already been taught not to take me seriously. The humiliation was built into the floor plan. A week earlier, my daughter insisted on family photos on my land. She said the river backdrop would be perfect. I agreed because it seemed harmless. But yesterday, walking my fence line, I found something wrong. A survey flag had been moved 15 feet toward the river. Just one flag. But it mattered. That shift opened access for a development road the Pierce family had been quietly planning. I pulled the flag out and took photos. Then I walked back to the original markers I'd placed 40 years ago with my wife beside me. Someone had reshaped my property line while pretending to take engagement pictures. They'd literally redrawn my land under the cover of celebration. This wasn't love. This was theft, wearing a white dress and holding a bouquet. And my daughter was the one holding the camera while it happened. June and Samuel met in a courthouse conference room under harsh fluorescent lights. They compared the land option agreement with development loan documents Samuel quietly pulled from his own firm's files. The loan was contingent on clean title transfer within 30 days of the wedding. My land wasn't just valuable. It was the leverage that made the entire deal possible. Without it, the Pierce development plan collapsed. June looked up from the papers. "We can file an injunction, but it has to be before the ceremony. Once vows are exchanged, a judge won't want to interfere with what looks like a family gift." Samuel nodded. "Monday morning?" June checked her watch. "If we get one more sworn affidavit this weekend, yes." The clock was ticking. We had 72 hours to stop a wedding that had been planned for a year. I opened my wife's trust amendment again and read the line I'd missed before. "The land remains Caleb's to pass as he chooses, without obligation or expectation." My wife had known my daughter might pressure me. She'd known our daughter looked at that 40 acres as something owed to her, not something built by two people over decades of work. My wife wrote this protection because she loved our daughter, but didn't trust her judgment about money and land. And at the bottom was another note in my wife's handwriting: "Grief isn't permission to rewrite someone's wishes." My daughter had told people her mother would have wanted the kids taken care of. She'd used my wife's death as moral cover for something my wife specifically prevented. The last excuse crumbled in my hands. I called June. I'd sign the affidavit. Whatever came next, I was ready. I learned something from Bryn that made it worse. She mentioned casually that my daughter told the venue staff I was a little forgetful these days and might need gentle guidance during the reception. It was strategy disguised as concern. My daughter had prepared the entire room to see me as unreliable before I walked through the door. If I protested, questioned, or said anything that sounded off, people would nod sympathetically and assume I was confused. The embarrassing comment at the rehearsal wasn't the first attack. It was the public version of a story she'd been selling privately for months. She'd spent all that time teaching people not to listen to me. By the time my daughter insulted me in front of 60 guests, everyone was already trained to agree. The cruelty had layers I was still discovering. My son came back Saturday morning with a thumb drive. He'd printed a label for it, trying to make betrayal look like a normal errand. His hands shook when he gave it to me. Text messages. Between your daughter and Owen. Owen was the groom, Samuel's son. I opened the files on my laptop. The texts were clear as glass. Sat after the vow photos. County stamp Monday. Dad signs once the music starts. They'd planned everything down to the minute. My daughter was going to have me sign during the reception, when I'd be emotional and distracted, surrounded by champagne and celebration. My guard would be down. My signature would be easy. My son stood by the window, not looking at me. I printed these before I lost my nerve. Use them. It was his first real act of repair. Small. Late. But real. Everything connected at once. The wedding, the property, the loan, the trust language, the seating chart, the speeches, the notary timing, the county filings, even the way my daughter suggested I wear my comfortable blazer to the rehearsal. The old one that made me look exactly like the man she'd been describing. Every piece pointed one direction. This had been planned for months, maybe longer. June laid it all out Friday afternoon. We file Monday at 9. The injunction, the cloud on title, your affidavit. Once those documents are stamped, the property transfer freezes. I looked at the paperwork that would stop my daughter's wedding plans cold. My hand didn't shake when I signed my name. Some decisions don't require emotion, just clarity. And I finally had that. June filed everything Monday morning at 9:15. The courthouse clerk's stamp hit the paper with a sound that echoed in the quiet office. That thunk was the trap closing. The recorder's office flagged my parcel immediately. Any transfer now required court approval. The title insurance company got notice by 10:30 and froze the pending easement. By 11, the development loan was on hold pending ownership clarification. June called from the courthouse steps. "It's done. The legal system is moving now. Nothing happens with your land unless you approve it personally." I sat on my porch with coffee, watching clouds move over the valley. Somewhere across town, my daughter's phone was ringing. I didn't need to be there to know the circle was tightening. The machinery had started, and it couldn't be stopped with a smile or a story. By Monday evening, the bank rejected the wire transfer. Claire called to confirm. "No money moves without your in-person authorization now, Mr. Turner." The wedding planner started making frantic calls. I didn't answer. Samuel sent one text. "Received." He'd seen the filing. He knew what it meant. His son was marrying into a family flagged for attempted property fraud. The Pierce lawyers were probably already reviewing whether to pull out of the development entirely. I sat on my porch until sunset, listening to the quiet. By tomorrow night, the whole ballroom would know something had gone wrong. They just wouldn't know I was the one who'd stopped it. That knowledge sat peaceful in my chest. Not angry, not proud, just certain. The truth was finally moving faster than the lies could run. Saturday night. My daughter's wedding reception glowed with candlelight and 200 guests. I sat at table 12 in the back corner, exactly where my daughter had placed me. Around 8 o'clock, Samuel's phone rang. He stepped from the main table, read something on his screen, then reached into his jacket. He pulled out folded papers. I read them once and looked directly across the room at me. His face was calm, but his eyes were granite. My daughter was near the cake, laughing with bridesmaids. She noticed her father-in-law's expression change. She followed his gaze to me. Her smile disappeared. Samuel didn't speak. He didn't need to. He simply laid the papers on the table in front of Owen. The silence started there and spread like spilled wine across white linen. People stopped talking. The music kept playing, but nobody heard it anymore. Something had broken, and everyone felt it. A champagne glass tipped on the main table. It rolled slowly across the linen, leaving a thin gold trail. The venue manager, calm in his gray suit, stepped in quietly. He asked my daughter to step into the side hallway. She looked around, confused and panicking, before following him out. Owen stood frozen by the cake table. Samuel folded the papers back into his pocket without a word. The band kept playing. Guests whispered, trying to understand what just happened. I stayed in my seat at table 12, hands folded, watching from a distance. I didn't follow my daughter into that hallway. I didn't need to. The door closed behind her with a soft click. And that quiet sound was what humiliation sounds like when it finally lands on the person who built it. Not loud, not dramatic, just final. I drove home Sunday morning. The valley was quiet under soft rain. My work boots sat by the door where I'd left them. Coffee cooled on the kitchen table beside the file folder that started everything. My son came by that afternoon. He didn't ask for forgiveness, and I didn't offer it yet. But my son brought back the copied documents my daughter had asked him to keep. He laid them on my table without speaking. That cost him something. It mattered. My daughter didn't call. She didn't need to. The wedding happened, but the land stayed mine. The development deal collapsed. Samuel pulled his family's investment Monday morning. I sat on my porch Tuesday evening, listening to birds settle for the night. I didn't need my daughter's approval to keep what I'd built with my own hands. A man who keeps his name already has more than any room full of strangers could ever offer him. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below telling me, what would you have done in my situation? I read every single one, and your perspective matters to me.